Jorge, you don't think I look like I'm wearing a helmet, do you? I don't want somebody to try and shoot me out of a cannon is all I'm... Hey dolls, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, with the Fingerdoo review of RuPaul's Drag Race España Season 2, Episode 3. And before I get started, well, I've got some tipperdoos to thank, like Heidi North. You're an absolute doll for thinking of me, Heidi. I also got a couple of tipperdoos through my link tree on my Instagram profile page. Is that where it is? I don't know. I've never looked it up myself. But Desiree Art popped by to wish me a belated birthday, and Brick Sloth also sent me a belated birthday greeting and to apologize for not being around as much as usual due to work. Don't work too hard, Brick. Seriously. I also want to welcome Devin Kruger to the Fingerdoo family on Patreon. Welcome, Devin. If you'd like to help support this channel with the tipperdoo or by joining the Fingerdoo family on Patreon, all the links for that and many more are down below. Seriously. Now, Jorge, drink me. Oh, we're back to the pink pucker. Somebody went to the store and got pink lemonade. Yummo. Thank you, Jorge. You're a doll. Okay, so this week's episode of Drag Race España was a hard one for me to watch. I'm not going to lie, mostly because the main challenge was an acting improv challenge, and I'm just going to say it. Comedy doesn't always translate from language to language. There are pop and cultural references that can be specific to a country, and that can make it hard for them to retain their humor, especially in another language. Especially when somebody's translating that other language into another language. It's very confusing. And it gives me a headache, I'm not going to lie. So, with that in mind, let's look at what the queens got up to this week. After the queens bid Ariel a fond farewell and Samantha lamented a second week in a row in the bottom, Sethless reflected on how much this elimination reminded her of Drag Volcano sashaying in episode 2 of season 1. Proving that anyone can be eliminated at any time. Diamante stirred the pot by telling Samantha that, well, she thought Ariel won the lip sync, especially since Samantha more or less did the same thing that she did last week. Well, I'm glad somebody said it, seriously. Whether the rest of the queens felt the same way, they all had to congratulate Sharon for her first win of the season. Here's to Sharon, seriously. The next day, Supreme showed up with this week's mini challenge. It wasn't clear what they were doing yet, but they were given 5 minutes to put on a flawless face and reminded not to forget to wear a shower cap. That means they're going to get something sticky on them, and I don't mean that in a sexy way, seriously. 5 minutes later, the queens were ready to play El Gran Juego de la Loca, and yes, that means the Great Crazy Game. For those of you who don't know, this is a spoof of the Spanish TV game show from the 90s called El Gran Juego de la Oca, the Great Game of the Goose. I feel like I've played that game once or twice, but I'm sure a shooting wasn't in Spain when I did it, I'm just saying. Woo! Jorge. But before they got started, Jorigi had a few things to say about the pit crew's underwear area, particularly the area in front. She claimed that the pit crew were padding. Personally, I think it was just the underwear. I'm sure it's one of those elastic straps inside the pouch that helps push everything up and forward, kind of like a push-up bra for your crotch. Either way, I for one found it distracting because it made them all look like they had little stiffies or that they were in danger of getting gangrene from lack of blood circulation. All I know is that Little Stiffies was the name of my fringe play. The queens had to stick their heads through a hole, not new for some of them, I'm sure, and then Supreme would start a popular saying that the queens would have to complete. Now, I just want to go on record as saying that these sayings may not be as common in Spain as I feel they are in North America, but I also want to say it's been a dog age since I've heard anyone say any of these myself, that I can understand how most of the queens hadn't heard any of them before. If the queens got the saying right, they got a kiss from a member of the pit crew. If they got it wrong, they got a pie in the mush maker. Of course, my first question was, what flavor pie? As I say, Most of the queens didn't get these right, but the queens who did get a kiss were Joriji, who knew call a spade, Diamante, who knew misery loves company, and Onyx, who knew cold hands, warm heart. Of course she knows that. Because they won the first round, these three queens took part in round two. This time, Joriji got caught up on the saying, out with the old, in with the new. She thought it was in with the young. She's so pretty. Onyx knew it's the same the whole world over, and Diamante knew wet spring, dry summer. I knew a girl named Summer. So the winners of the mini challenge were Onyx and Diamante, and that meant they got to pick their teams for the maxi challenge. Putricia's Diary, a fictional daytime talk show. The queens would be guests with outrageous personalities and even more outrageous stories to share with the show's host, Putricia. I was already dreading having to watch this, not just because of the references they would be using, but I knew I was going to spend a lot of time pausing and rewinding on the subtitles. I wasn't wrong. Right away, Onyx and Diamante started to pick scenarios and who they wanted to work with. There were 3 scenarios for them to choose from: with onions or without, which they thought had something to do with potato tortillas, drag paternity tests, and only flans. Diamante picked the tortilla one for herself, and Onyx picked only flans. As for her castmates, Diamante picked Estrella and Sharon. Onyx picked Samantha and Joriji, which left Sethless, Marina, Venedita, and Hota performing the drag paternity test. Sounds vivid. Then the teams got down to working on their... Wait, no, they didn't. They got down to judging each other's teams. Team paternity test seemed pleased that there was a comedy queen in each group, but they were sure Samantha was going to steal the show no matter what happened. Onyx thought that Diamante's wanting to work with 2 strong queens, Sharon and Estrella, was going to backfire on her because, well, she was sure to get overshadowed. While the queens on Team Tortilla were looking forward to bringing out the best in each other in the season's first acting challenge. It's good to have dreams. And then it was time to film Putricia's Diary with, surprise, surprise, Supreme as Putricia. Team Tortilla went first. I feel like they started off well, but then there was a problem with the backstory. Clearly, Tortilla and White Onion were at odds, but when Putricia introduced Red Onion, she asked her how she felt with Tortilla keeping White Onion all to herself. Then White Onion started eating her onions and had some sort of attack, which needed mouth-to-mouth from one of the pit crew. Of course it did. Red Onion called it sugar. I called it hot. And then Tortilla wanted some sugar too, and then I don't know what the hell happened. But I will say this, I felt like Sharon did the best job working with the other 2. Here's to Sharon again. Well done, just saying. The best part about Team Drag Paternity's performance was when, after Golfa and Goya greeted each other warmly and dripping with sugar, Putricia told them to be real and act honestly. So Goya slapped Golfa's face, and it wasn't a love tap. This was a flat hand swinging from the shoulder bitch slap. Kind that leaves a mark. I've had those. Just saying. Then the daughter in question, Amapola, came in, and clearly there were issues all around. I just couldn't tell what they were. When Putricia brought in Mari, the polygraph technician, but she seemed to be more of a DNA specialist from what I was getting. Truth be told, I couldn't understand what kind of specialist she was, but then I'm going to say, neither did she. I have to be honest. I lost all interest in this scene and was just happy it ended. Eventually. If that scene was hard to follow, OnlyFlans was the worst for me. The only good thing I can say about it is that it was the last scene. Amaranta was a single mother making ends meet as a dominatrix. Her daughter, Elenita, made money on her website rubbing custard tarts all over her body. And if that's not confusing enough, Elenita's best customer was Toby, who was clearly into puppy play. Personally, I would have made Toby a patisserie, but then no one asked me. This whole thing ended with Elenita demonstrating her flan technique to the whole studio. Needless to say, I was just glad it ended, and I'll never eat a custard tart again. Gag. Seriously. The next day, as the queens got ready for the runway, Hota talked about her great-grandmother's career singing with Lola Flores, which Estrella didn't buy for a second. Even when Hota brought out the shawl Lola gave her, Estrella thought it looked too new and unsubstantial to be a true Lola shawl. Although why Estrella was worrying about herself with the 18-year-old, I'll never know. I guess everyone needs a hobby. Meanwhile, the adults in the room had a much more significant conversation. Sharon and Benedita started out talking about their careers and how the pandemic had affected them. But Sharon had a different take on the pandemic. Not being able to work like she did afforded her time to be with her father, who had been battling Alzheimer's for 18 years. When he did pass away, he did it on Pride Day, June 28th. Which was very significant for Sharon. Although her father took time to accept his son, Sharon felt his dying on Pride Day was his message to her that he loved her and that she would always be thinking of her father on Pride Day. It was a very emotional conversation, to be sure. Jorge, tissue me. Oh, thank you. And then it was time to head to the main stage. Supreme looked yummy in yellow. Las Javier looked as cute as ever. I'm just going to say it. Anna Locking looked more dramatic than usual. And joining them at the judges' table was actor and director Eduardo Casanova, glittering in gorgeous shades of blue. Seriously, I don't want to see the bathroom that he cleans that off in after he's done. Seriously. Category is Almodovar Leading Ladies. First up, drag Setla as Tilda Swinton in Almodovar's short film, The Human Voice. I've not seen this film, but I still gave Setla a Fingerdoo for a stunning runway. Seriously. Estrella Extravaganza was serving one of my favorite Almodovar leading ladies, Rosie De Palma in Kika. Prosthetic nose and false teeth aside, I thought this was one of Estrella's best makeup looks so far, so I definitely gave her a Fingerdoo. Seriously. Samantha Valentine went for it by representing two leading ladies from Almodovar's Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. Samantha entered the stage as Lucia, played by Julieta Serrano, and then did a reveal into Peppa, played by Carmen Maura. I was impressed by Samantha, so I gave her a Fingerdoo. Seriously. Benedita Von Dash's entrance look and subsequent reveal were inspired by costumes worn by Gael Garcia Bernal in Bad Education. Needless to say, I gave Benedita a Fingerdoo as well. Look at that dress! Seriously. Diamante Mary Brown's runway was inspired by Almodovar's The Skin I Live In. As in the movie, this look was subdued and simple, but Diamante's bloody performance on the runway was not. Fingerdoo for Diamante. Sharon's recreation of Marissa Paredes in high heels was almost flawless. Sure, the judges had some issues with her bracelet, but she solved that by throwing it away. Well done, Sharon. Fingerdoo for you too, seriously. Hota Kera Hota tried to recreate the Jean-Paul Gaultier costume as worn by Victoria Abril as Andrea Kera in Kika. Hota said she modernized the iconic Gaultier, but I think she ruined it. Figures an 18-year-old would think they can improve on perfection. Fingerdoo for Hota. Seriously. Jorigi Derklee's runway was inspired by a costume worn by Penelope Cruz in Broken Embraces. I thought she looked fantastic. And I want that wig. Fingerdoo for Jorigi. Marina was looking wild in her runway, inspired by a tiger costume worn by the male character Zeka in The Skin I Live In. Now, I've not seen this film, so I don't know if later an actress wears the same costume, so I feel Marina missed the brief here, but she looks so good, still gave her a Fingerdoo. Seriously. Onyx's runway was inspired by another Andrea Kera costume from the movie Kika. The attention to detail with this look made it more than deserving of a Fingerdoo. The boobs lit up. How do you not give a Fingerdoo to that? Say it. You'd never lose your keys. Ooh, ooh, ooh. And then it was time for the judges' critiques. Setlas, Jorigi, Marina, and Onyx were safe. As for the rest of the queens, Estrella was an obvious favorite of the judges. From the challenge to the runway, there were no bad comments. Seriously. Samantha did not get a lot of praise for the challenge, but Anna loved what she did on the runway, so it wasn't all bad. Benedita was a fave of Los Javier in the challenge, and all the judges agreed that her runway was stunning. It's a good night for Benedita, seriously. Diamante, on the other hand, did not get a lot of compliments for her performance in the challenge, especially being up against two strong comedy queens. As for her runway, ironically, her performance there saved her look. Sharon was obviously one of the judges' faves this week as well. Eduardo Casanova thought she was a brilliant actress, and the judges all agreed her runway was flawless. I agree, I really liked it. I thought she looked fantastic. Hota clearly had missed the mark all around. Her lack of listening to the other actors in the Maxi Challenge and reverting to fighting and making out proved to make her scene one of the hardest to watch. As for her runway, Anna thought it was a mistake for her to alter Jean-Paul Gaultier's design. I did too. I mean, well, Jean-Paul Gaultier. Back in the Untucked Lounge, Marina was complaining that no one seemed to like her, which is sad to be sure. But when a whole room feels the same way about one person, who's the one with the problem? Seriously. Marina had been called cold and standoffish from day one and clearly had done nothing to change that. She called out Jarigi for being the worst of them all in that regard. Jarigi out and out told Marina that she was insufferable. She exhausted the other queens with her constant complaining and that she farts all the time. All the time. But she doesn't eat that much. How could she be farting? I just want to know. It could be medical. Maybe that's why she's miserable. Either way, it was clear that there was going to be no resolution between these two queens anytime soon. Thankfully, they didn't have to because, well, the rest of the queens entered the room. Samantha was clearly going to be in the bottom this week, and she was fed up with it. Me too. I think she should have gone home last week. Diamante was also worried that she was in the bottom because of how she was eclipsed in her scene with Estrella and Sharon. But she was far from worried about it, especially since Hota was also a shoo-in for the bottom two. Back on the main stage, it was announced that this week's winner was Benedita Von Dash, and the two queens in the bottom were, surprise, surprise, Samantha and Hota. As for the lip sync, I thought this was one of Samantha's better performances. Yes, she removed her wig again, but it was to change it for a blonde one. And yes, she removed all her clothes again, but it was to change into a sequin dress. But Hota had it right. This was not a comedy song, and as emotional as Samantha ended the number, it was too little too late because of all the humor she put into it off the top. So, when it was all said and done, I wasn't surprised that Hota, Shantae, and finally, Samantha Valentine's sashayed away. It was an obviously emotional moment for everyone, seriously. Well, what do you think? Were the right queens in the bottom? Did the right queen sashay? Who do you think is in fear of being next? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, don't forget to check out my links to becoming a Tipperdoo, joining the Fingerdoo family on Patreon, or getting your Wilma merch in my Redbubble store. While you're down there, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And feel free to share this video with anyone you think is as big a Drag Race fan as we are. Until next week, miss me? Mwah. Seriously, such a busy week on Drag Race. God bless Samantha. I feel like she was also believing her own hype, like she deserved to be there because of the work she's done previously. You know, it's the work she's done previously that got her on the show, I'm sure, but not once you're on the show, everyone starts at zero. Hota, I have to say, I was impressed with her this week. Not in the challenge and not on the runway, but that lip sync I felt said a lot. She really made some good choices, and as a performer, I think that speaks well of her, you know, as a queen. I just wish she wasn't such a pill. It's like she doesn't want anyone to like her. Oh, bless her. You know who else absolutely impressed the hell out of me this week? Estrella Extravaganza. I was really impressed. I thought she would be over the top and crazy in the challenge, and she wasn't. And then on the runway, I just was so impressed with her Rosie De Palma look. One thing that we can all agree on is this is a way better cast than season 1 of Drag Race España. So we're 3 episodes in, and it's already hard to pick the next person to go. It could really be almost anybody. Just have to stay tuned, I guess.